Hello, and welcome to another great episode of the Contractor Business Builder podcast. We have the honor of hosting Eytan Bensoussan. He's the CEO of North One Business Banking. We're going to be talking about how to get your finances right. How are you doing today, Eytan?
I'm very well, thanks. How about you?
I'm doing wonderful. Looking forward to diving into all this great knowledge that you have about running finances for construction businesses. So, can you tell us a bit about your background and what inspired you to start North One?
Yeah, absolutely. And as it happens, I have a deep connection to the construction and the trades industries because my growing up, grew up in a family of small business owners. My grandfather was an electrical contractor, and it was his dinner table that I remember seeing like his finances. This was back in the
Yeah.
time when they actually kept real legitimate books that could open and close with the
Yeah.
calculators, the long spool of white paper as he would do, but I just remember, that his skill lay in kind of actually being in the field, but when he'd be at his house with the papers and the invoices, et cetera, on the table, it was a totally different level of anxiety. And so and that's kind of my anchor point. And so, North One actually came from much later in life where, part of what I had realized, having worked in a number of larger companies, was that they were saving a ton of money and time by connecting the processes and the data and the money across all their different financial tools and systems. And this was getting them, to meaningful savings on running their business. But thankfully, they actually had little armies of people that you could just throw at the problem. So it wasn't, the top priority. But then the thing that the light bulb that went off was thinking about the businesses that I grew up with, how you don't have, a team of 15 people you can go to throw at closing your books. Yep. Errors are often fatal. So the idea of taking a bank account, which is at the center of every business's life, but actually making it more than just a bank account. Of course, it's going to be an incredible bank account on its merits, but it's actually designed to be a connected hub to all of the different pieces of the operations of the managing finances of a business. And that's, I think, the point of North One. It's not that the world needs another bank account. There are many of them. But what if a bank could actually start becoming the hub of all financial decision making for a small business? Wouldn't that give them a leg up in getting things done more effectively? I think that's where really North One.
Yeah. Awesome. And so essential, critical. I've often talked about money and cash flow being the lifeblood of a company. So you want to have a good, strong heart. And it sounds like North One could be that as far as, facilitating that cash flow throughout the business. And I think every contractor out there has been through those hard times of dealing with cash shortfalls for cash flow and, having trouble with paying the right people and purchasing the right materials when things get tight. How does North One's banking system help facilitate cash flow and cash flow management for contractors?
Yeah, I think there's kind of a couple different levels. One of our strongest communities is the contracting and the trades community. And so it really happens in three levels where we see this really light up something that they was missing in their life. I think the first one is, honestly, it's going to sound like, of course, but we really invested in making the mobile banking experience as powerful as the desktop one. And for a lot of other banks out there, especially for people who are on the move, in the field, et cetera, when you have to go and flip open a laptop, find an internet connection, I mean, it just complicates things, and just that creates room for error. And so by having a full featured banking, hub right in your phone, it untethered a lot of our customers from, needing to go find a coffee shop or sitting in their truck with the laptop open. And I wouldn't underestimate that. I think the second one is, a lot of these customers, especially in this group, they really value being able to get paid on their terms, right? So a lot of banks will force you, oh, we don't cash a check this big, or, it's going to cost you this much to receive a wire. And what really, as our North Star, we said, how do we remove the friction for our customers to choose how to get paid? So for example, we wanted to make sure that, checks of pretty large checks to get cashed. So we made a $50,000 check cashing limit, can clear them as far as the next day. We saw that so many of our construction customers were getting paid by wires. And when you looked at the prices they were getting charged at Chase or Wells Fargo's, $35, $40 just to get your own money that you've made, we made wires free. And so you kind of take that logic and say, the single most important thing our customers can do is get paid. How do we just start removing the kind of the slight little friction bumps that makes them do awkward things, like saying, I know you have a check here, but would you mind sending them? I don't know what that is.
Awesome. Yeah.
But would you mind sending it through ACH, right? It makes an awkward conversation.
Yeah.
And I think the The third one is actually that last piece I talked about, which is how do I get a couple jobs done at once? How do I make sure, at the very base that I can create some built-in budgets right into my bank account, right? I don't want
Yeah.
to necessarily have to go take a spreadsheet and do that. We have a system called envelopes, which lets you kind of allocate, monies programmatically for things like rent or OpEx, et cetera, profit,
Mm-hmm.
you name it. And so in all those ways, it kind of the only connecting theme is understanding what is a day in the life of these customers. And if you spend enough time with them, it's pretty obvious where the pain lies. And then it's up to, us from our point of view saying, well, what tools do we have to actually go and address those issues where you can just see the body language of our customers. I've spent days riding with them to the job site and you can just see when they get all tense. And it's typically when the bank account, they have to do
Mm-hmm.
something with paying a bill or getting paid. You can see the
Yeah.
body language change. That's really why, we built the way we did.
Yeah, lots of great points and features to unpack there. I like what you said about the envelopes and having proper allocations. I think that's sort of a next step, next level for a lot of contractors, especially the ones who typically have one bank account and everything kind of comes in and goes out, and you never really know what you're spending on or where your money's at, because it's just if there's money there, you can spend it. If not, then you get that anxiety on the job site, like you mentioned. But yeah, having those different envelopes in place, and then obviously taking out those small little frictions. I can attribute this to like building out systems and stuff that we do, where it may seem like really small wins, but if you can save yourself a couple minutes here, one less thing in your brain space that you got to think about or take care of, streamlining things where it's a day or two faster, it just helps everything move and just makes your life so much easier in the long run. So definitely, super helpful for sure. What are some common mistakes as far as like financial management, banking management that you see construction, business owners making, and how would you maybe do things differently, or what have you seen
Yeah.
like as far as solutions?
So yeah, I'm fortunate in that I get to receive a lot of, let's call it like innocent questions from folks being like, hey, how would
Yeah.
you, et cetera. And you can realize what's the root of a lot of those questions. And I think the thing that especially in the construction business, we see a lot of is people
Mm-hmm.
going on hero mode for too long. So, you start out and you're probably doing 8 or 9 different jobs and you kind of try to grow enough to kind of whittle it down, et cetera. But the problem that happens is that owner, that tradesperson who starts that process, they don't account for the time they're spending on admin. They're not taking into the time they're spending on sales. Each one of those is in theory someone you're going to maybe pay to do this for you one day or help you with. And so they
Mm-hmm.
go into hero mode. Well, oh no, it's actually have amazing margins because I can sell, et cetera, but you don't realize that you're actually
Yeah.
doing the job of many. And so they often get to this moment when they've actually started hiring, but the model fundamentally assumed that they could keep the margins of a one man or one woman does all. Not true. You've got to hire that person. Your margins
Mm-hmm.
compress and you're looking saying, I don't understand how I was making, such strong profit before. And all of a sudden now I'm having a hard time. Not to mention folks who honestly out of strategic, like trying to win the business, sometimes even just under insecurity, like, am I good enough? They
Mm-hmm.
don't price themselves well. And so they say, well, if I win the deal, I get, I'll have at least a foot in the door. And then the next time they come, they'll come back to me. The problem is that it's a perpetuating cycle. We see a lot of contractors just kind of rationalize underpricing themselves because it'll just win the deal. But the problem is that the person, even if they get referrals, the referrals are made out of an understanding of price value. So they're like, oh, this was the cheapest contractor I've ever seen. And all of a sudden you now have this
Yeah.
emerging narrative saying, oh, look how cheap it is. Problem is, as soon as you raise your prices, that's not why they went to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you want to do is almost when you can assert with confidence the value that you're providing and not let the price be the thing you cave on. It really
Yeah.
is. Some of our best customers have really gone to kind of price reductions something went wrong and it was the right thing to do rather
Mm-hmm.
than this is the sticker price I'm going to put and then advertise it as that.
Yeah, pricing definitely so very important. It's kind of the upstream, taking care of the issue upstream before you see the effects downstream, which often happens in the pricing and estimating of projects, where if you've estimated and you've priced well, even if things don't go perfect, or if you need to bring in a project manager when you grow, you've got the margins, you got the pricing in place so that you're not feeling those effects of tight cash flow and low profit margins after producing a project. Nobody likes to get to an end of a project and realize they didn't make any money on it, have essentially, kind of been working for free after the overhead and everybody else is paid is, a reoccurring theme. And, I'm guilty of it. I've had that happen with projects too, where, I've underpriced for whatever reason. And it always comes back to bite you in the ass essentially later on. So very, very important there. And I like what you said as well as like the business owners often the running multiple different jobs within inside a business. So you want to make sure that your pricing is right so that you have that room for expansion and growth as the business grows. So yeah, huge things there. Getting back to like North One and the bank account, just to give like the differentiator, how is North One like different than some of those other, larger banks that you mentioned? What are some of the differentiators
Yep.
that people can expect?
Well, first, the pricing. It's free on no monthly fees, no fees for inbound wires. We'll refund third-party ATM withdrawal fees. We have a cash deposit network. We'll refund the price that you make a charge. So we try to just create, because we don't have 100,000 branches, and don't need to have 200,000 people. We use technology to build the thing that all those people do. We're able to create a better pricing scheme for folks. I think that's the first piece. Just raw, what's the value that you get out of it? We have a cash back program. A lot of our folks are on the road a lot. We have 1% back on fuel, 4% back on restaurants, 4% back on lodging. So we've really tried just dollars and cents, like technology aside, great. I love it. It goes faster. It does all the cool things, but just dollars and cents. Can we make such an amazing business case that it's a no brainer when you're comparing it to your community banks, to the big bulge banks that are around the corner? That's number one. I think number two is on the support and the service. So we actually hire only locally private support agents who are fully empowered to make decisions. They have a budget. They can make resolutions on the spot. We have phone support, async chat support. The whole thing that I was trying to do was remove the need for someone who's really good at their trade to have to go stand in a bank line to deal with a question or sit on hold. And, you might be on hold at the job site or at your office. You're not doing anything. You're listening to their annoying music or something. So we really invested in not just having a person who can say hello, and then you have to re-authenticate yourself 5 times as you make your way towards the organization. We have a system where the people who actually handle our support volume, they're actually empowered. Your whole history. You don't have to kind of say, here's what everything is at the fingertips, and the problem resolution happens really fast. There's a reason why our customer satisfaction scores is now well over a year are above 90% every month, because we've taken a lot of these folks. They come from like service industry, so we tried to find people from hotels, restaurant hostesses, who then, if you were to put them in bank support, which is like where your lowest expectations are, wouldn't it be delightful that you have someone who's in the service business for you? And on the third one, it's really around technology. It's about, wow, isn't there a smarter way to do these things? Things like as silly as, what if I could just send a wire in 3 steps? Why do I need these like 17 screens that I'm going? It's the same information each time. Things like, building envelope system. We just heard enough from our customers saying, I'm paying a lot of money for bill pay, for bill.com, et cetera. And it's really frustrating because I use it for like one thing. I just use it for like 1 or 2 things. And so we built a version of that. We built, our own bill payment solution directly in the bank account for free. So we've used technology to say, well, what are the problems that our customers are facing? How do we just carve more and more of that away and like serve it up to them? And that's been really helpful. And so overall, we're trying to make sure that there's no good reason for you to not want to at least have this as a bank account that complements your existing one, or actually the one that you move to. And we found that our customers who kind of deploy, they'll save as much as a day a month of productivity, not in terms of like you get your Monday back, but a 15-minute thing there, a 35-minute thing there, and 18 lost bills that you forgot about here. And it kind of adds up to meaningful time.
Yeah, very cool. And for sure, the technology is great. Like you mentioned, just saving those small amounts of time. And even if it doesn't seem like a lot of time, often these little tasks, it's again, the brain space, right? It's having to switch focus, switch hats all the time of like, you're on the site. Now you need to start thinking about your finances, or this is taking longer. You get on the phone. And as a business owner, an hour of your time or half an hour of your time can be hundreds, thousands of dollars, depending on how much volume you're doing. So it's not just the cost savings of, the transfers and everything else, but the time is the big factor there, and just the simplicity of having everything working together. On the technology side, you mentioned a number of things there. What about like integrations or communication with
Yeah.
other banks or credit cards or QuickBooks or things like that? What's involved or connected with
It's at the
Northwest?
core of what we do. So,
Mm,
at the core philosophy is that so many bank accounts are these weird castles that they're just like,
mhm.
we won't, nobody, we can't connect. It's just going to be our little information stack here. And so
Yeah.
we said your bank account information should be living. It's
Mhm.
something that is serving you in order to get a job done. And so
Mhm.
security obviously has to go into it, but really the most important thing is that you're actually unlocking information. So QuickBooks, FreshBooks, Wave accounting, Zoho books, Patriot account, you name it, like the list goes down. We just said, how do we
Mhm.
unlock the information? We'll obviously the information could be exported, it could be moved around. There's a whole bunch of different ways that we have
Mhm.
thought about what is the ultimate job to be done with this bank information, with this,
Yeah.
this transaction information.
Mhm.
For example, we have some customers, we have the ability to have notes written onto any one of our transactions. Why? Because our customers were saying, I have these I call them on the phone, I ask for a discount, they say yes, it's not reflected in the invoice. But my bookkeeper in 3 weeks from now is going to say, like, why does this
Yeah.
not match? So they write down notes directly in there to help us. That's, I
Mhm.
think, part of what we've done to make that the story of your transactions be something that can be exported, that's something that can be really well understood.
Definitely ongoing theme here as far as making things easier and actually listening to the end user of, what are their frustrations, how can we make things better, and fine tuning it to the feedback that you receive. What's some of the best advice you've ever received? Business, financial, whatever it is. What's some of the best advice you receive, and how is it? How have you implemented it, or how has it affected what you do on a daily basis?
I think it's that action turn into habits and habit turn into success. So to me, there's totally ways where you just gotta go jump on the grenade once and it happens and you just move on
Mhm.
from that. But when we find something that works, it's about, how do we turn this into a system so that we're constantly doing things like talking to our customers. It's so easy to say, oh yeah, I talk to my customers, but now there's we're all measuring how many times a week have, each person on the team emailed or talked to a customer, because
Yeah.
that muscle turns into a thing that then you actually have created a culture and a system around it. So that to me is like
Mhm.
the one that, we try to create a system of good habits, and then you have to prune them, right? Habits that served you a year or two ago, just these odd things. You feel it very quickly. But I think the other one is also, it's putting myself in outside of my own world. So often I'm thinking about what I have to solve for, et cetera. But when you put yourself in the customer shoes, do they really care about this? Probably not. And that
Mhm.
idea of like almost removing your brain and turning it around and putting in the shoes of the other person, it really
Yeah.
allows you to understand how are they making decisions. And that served us really well. It served me well, especially when making choices on what to offer, how to price. My
Yeah.
problems are very rarely my customers' problems. And so I have to figure out like what's
Mhm.
theirs. And the more I solve them, the more good things happen.
Yeah. Sounds like you've made a habit of putting yourself in the client's shoes, which is awesome and super important. And yeah, like you said, habits turn into actions. How you do one thing is how you do everything. It's as far as taking the time to set up a process, to figure things out, to improve your outlook, to get outside of your world, as you mentioned, and kind of reverse the lens of like, how would my client approach this situation, or what do they care about? Super important. I know for myself, old habits die hard, so make good ones. And I know it's been an ongoing thing for me throughout my entire life of like improving the habits that I have. And it's remarkable sometimes when things start to slide, and then all of a sudden it's like you clue in a lot faster, and like good habits will pull you forward and just keep you operating well. And yeah, really solid advice for sure. As far as like overall financial management of a business construction company, any tips or advice there as far as like how to operate things? Like obviously we've been kind of focusing on banking, but just the whole like financial management side of construction. Any ideas or tips
Yeah.
on
Well, look, I mean, I think where we are today, especially, from thinking about the economy, et cetera, we're probably entering one of the larger growth modes in construction that we've seen in quite some time.
yeah.
So many things are starting to align that are unlocking this potential. I mean, think of interest rates, think of, the
Mhm.
re-onshoring manufacturing, all these things that are happening. So this is like actually a time to lean in the trades and construction. It's a time for optimism. And so I think, the thing that I try to tell a lot of our customers is take that energy, but then invest it in the non-sexy things too, right? So
Mhm.
it's one thing to go and get new business and you're going to do that, et cetera. But it's actually that you don't want to let the wheels to fly off the car. So I actually told, everyone, take a course on learning how to use Google Sheets or Excel. Learn how to build financial model. I know it's like the worst thing. It's like a root canal for some folks, but once it's not
Mhm.
scary anymore, and once you're kind of able to manage it, it unlocks so much because
Mhm.
there's no shortage of resources for construction folks saying, if you're in a growth mode and you're gobbling up new work,
Yep.
how do you let the hiring, the admin, et cetera, not actually implode your business? It's such a dangerous thing to think that new work equals more revenue. New
Mhm.
work and more revenue can actually create a loss because you're quickly hiring up and you're scrambling to get people. You're not getting the best prices. And if you don't have a really good way to understand how that's actually turning into dollars and cents.
Yep.
We talked to a lot of folks who got really close to the brink because they just
Mhm.
assumed lots of new business equals good things everywhere. And
Yep.
then, catches up to you.
Definitely, I've fallen into that trap myself. Growing really quickly with the construction business, and if things are a little mismanaged or not working optimally where you're at now, doubling your business is just going to create double the chaos and problems. And generally, as you scale, like you said, the profitability, the margins are actually going to decrease because often you're hiring more people. You just can't, you don't have the attention that you would on the current level of business you're doing. So not to have the good processes and systems in place is really important. And then, like what you said before too, like non-sexy stuff, learning, upgrading your knowledge on technology, or using certain sheets or getting some processes down pat is super important. And it's often uncomfortable if you haven't done it before, you're not used to it. And often that's kind of why people maybe shy away from it a little bit, because they don't really know where to start, or they haven't done it before, or maybe they tried it and it didn't work out. But to exercise that muscle, create that habit of learning new things, incorporating technology, building out processes, working on that foundation of the business before you start to really push and capitalize, like you said, on the optimism and the new growth that's going to be happening in construction. So definitely a good time to be a contractor right now. Can
I
you
would just
walk
say
us?
that.
Yep,
Oh,
go
sorry.
for it.
Go ahead.
Mhm. No, all ears here. Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, when you have the luxury or the privilege of having a budget, that's
Mhm.
when you actually want to invest in getting people around you who are good at the things that stop you, right? I
Yeah.
think like it's one thing to just be able to do enough of the things you don't like to get by. But when you have
Mhm.
that opportunity, ally yourselves with advisors, vendors or employees who can just take that thing that weighs you down and unlock it. I think some of the
Yeah.
biggest transformative things I've done is just this self-awareness that like, hey, I'm not good at everything. Who could
Yes.
be 100 times better than me at this? And then that just completely changes the shape of how your day-to-day goes.
Yeah, fantastic point. It brings up the thought of, who, not how. You don't need to know how to do everything if you know who can do
Yeah.
it for you, essentially. And it's definitely business is a team sport. And the stronger your team, the larger your team, the better you're going to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Ironically, the best way to hire for those people is to know how to do their job a little bit, right? Like
Mhm.
sometimes you
Yeah.
can't, sometimes it's not going to be possible. But every time that I've hired someone where I've kind of done a little bit of what they're going to do, it just gives me such a better signal on quality. So there is a value in learning it, but then like knowing when to stop and when to hire.
For sure. The more you know about something, the better you're going to be able to hire someone for
Yeah.
that position. But again, comfort zone, just because you know how to do it well, doesn't mean that you should continue to do it. So you can unlock, other things that either you're better capable of or more valuable tasks, or you just enjoy doing more, which I think everyone can appreciate, doing what you're well suited for. So could you walk us through real life case scenario of client that's used North One, and kind of where they're at, how they utilize the system, and where they're at now as far as the progress?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, fortunately, we've been in business for a few years now, so I can actually have seen the
Mhm.
growth. But I mean, I remember there was this a customer of ours who lives in upstate New York, and when they started, they were maybe a year and a half into their business, so they knew they had something that could be sustainable. But it was like they were just saying, I made so many like quick decisions when I got started, just like grabbing whatever things were available,
Yeah.
tools, you name it, services, and now
Mhm.
I'm trying to clean up. And so we saw that the first thing that they did is they moved off, a free in-house accounting thing that they just picked up and said, well, what's the right accounting software for where I'm like net today and for the next maybe year or two? So they started thinking about systems and tools, and that's where we came in, where they said, I'm looking for a bank account that can give, can help both myself and my co-partner have their own access and logins to the account, their own cards. And so that's how we found each other. But then you kind of see that, the first level was they were kind of like just upgrading their own business. So that's where they really took advantage of envelopes. And they started saying, if we just allocate something for rent every month for our office and maybe a certain thing for tools, automatically that big lump of money called your balance is not as scary anymore. And they realized two things. One, they were just sitting on money out of fear, thinking like, I'm just gonna, need it. So I don't know if I can spend it. But I think second, when they started creating lots of envelopes for like one thing for maintenance of tools, one thing for new tools, for payroll, et cetera, they realized they started seeing their margins for the first time. They started seeing things. And that's, again, that's where you shine light. It could be envelopes, it could be Google, it could be Excel. But I think the thing that I've been really fortunate is to see as those businesses have grown, they've been able to grow within our platform. Right. I mean, this is why we've invested to having just massive transaction limits, no limits on receiving ACHs or wires, as much as $200,000 in wires a day that can be outbound. Things like we have our debit card spend can go up to $10,000 a day. Everything where as we saw the business was growing and growing, we realized that, how do we continue adjusting the infrastructure to grow with it? And that's when the piece that I thought was really great, some of the work that they do, they actually get paid by credit card. And so we had enough of our construction folks that were getting paid not just by ACH or checks, but actually by credit card. They were doing small jobs on the spot. We went out and built an instant deposit service with PayPal, Square, and Stripe so that they could get sales to dollars in bank account in about 30 minutes. Wow. And that allowed us again. And so this one customer I'm thinking about, they were always the tip of the spear. They're so vocal about what they needed. It helped me say, look around and actually ask the rest of the customers, who's actually feeling this. One thing I'm kind of notorious of is all of the emails that come from North One to our customers come from me personally. It's not kind of marketing at northone.com. It's actually my name. And so there's always a question in there. There's always like, write me back, tell me what you think. And that feedback is just incredible. So that's really nice. And those guys now, they're making close to $5 million a year. When they started with us 2.5 years ago, they were closer to maybe like a few 100,000. And just seeing how
that's quite the trajectory.
It's been amazing. And they just took advantage of just being really good at like following where the work takes it. They had two things that they did that had nothing to do with us. That was just so smart is they started really investing in referrals, telling their customers, look, if you make a referral to me and I get the job, I'll give you 5% of that job of the bonus. And it just boom. And I mean, it just exploded for them. And the thing that they had is that they were constantly creating this network of talent that if they ever needed a job, there's a person they knew they could trust who's great at, this particular skill. And that allowed them to not be flat-footed when all of a sudden they had like more jobs than they could handle. They actually had a bit of a Rolodex of folks they could tap on, and those folks knew folks. And so the thing that I was always amazed of is how these guys, their capacity was never constrained. They just, I don't know how it was a brilliant move or just lucky, but always thinking about, I need to where can I find more people I can trust? And they would kind of cycle them through work until eventually they had so much work that everybody was working for them. It was a really nice thing to see.
Nice. That's an inspiring story. And having that good financial management and the right, systems for the financial side of things, it really is eye-opening. It's kind of like, turn the light bulb on and you can see where the money is, where it's going, and gives you just a whole new kind of picture of how to manage your business. And then some great tips on there about, the referrals and having, again, the team concept of having the right people in place. It's not just employees, it's obviously like trades and third parties and things like that. And being able to rely on those people to pull them in when, you do get some big projects or a bunch of work comes in, because as good of marketing as you can do, there's always going to be these ups and downs and crunch times when things get super busy or slow down or what have you. So having that, ability to kind of have flexible capacity to take advantage of new work coming in is super important. So what's the best way for people to connect with you, to connect with North One, to learn more, to, get signed up for an account and things like that?
Well, look, I mean, website's always the best, www.northone.com. There, there's right on the spot, you can talk to support, you can explore, there's a demo that you can see, and people can reach me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, Eytan Bensoussan. It's my name. It's really easy. Anytime.
Yep, right on. So we'll put some links in the description of this, podcast video, depending where you're checking in on this, to the website and LinkedIn. By all means, go check it out, get signed up. It's, going to be a game changer. Any final words of wisdom for the listeners, or anything else you wanted to mention, Etienne?
Yeah, well, it's more than anything. I'm so excited about the next 5 years in construction. I think there's a real dark moment in the last few years when interest rates are going up and after COVID and all that. But I just think that this is going to be one of the most exciting parts of the economy. So, power on to everybody who's ready to capture that.
Yeah, love it. Definitely optimistic about the future and, building better essentially. So thanks so much for coming on, Etienne, and really appreciate you sharing your advice and expertise.
Appreciate it. Have a great day.